Welcome back to another quick coffee questions or quick coffee moments with me, Kristen Forster. This morning I just thought I'd throw up an interesting little kind of fact, kind of confuse our brains a little bit. But the Ten Commandments are incredibly famous, of course. But the weird thing is, the Ten Commandments kind of covers both the passage in Exodus and in Deuteronomy that summarise a list that kind of captures everything in the law. You know, there are 613, I think, actual kind of commandments, but they're summarised with what we call the Ten Commandments, which are kind of spelt out in about 17 verses in Exodus. Can't remember how many in Deuteronomy. Funny thing is, if you take that list and you try and break it into 10, it's easy to do, but it's difficult to actually decide how. In other words, there's plenty of ways you can get 10 commandments out of it, but the lists aren't always the same. And that surprises folks. Because you tend to think, well, I know what the Ten Commandments are. You kind of almost put it as a kind of a quiz question, couldn't you? List the Ten Commandments. We all think we know. That's just the list we become familiar with. If you go and look on Wikipedia, for instance, it shows you how different Jewish and Christian communities have actually broken the list of things that are stated in those summary sections into various different lists of 10. It all depends a little bit on what you group together. And what you divide apart. So is not taking the Lord your God's name in vain just part of having no gods before him? Is not coveting your neighbour's wife or his ox, is that two or is it one? Is not covenant, well, I'm kind of losing myself now. I won't try and do it because it's not the point of this. I just wanted to kind of get across is you can make different lists of 10. The funny thing is you can kind of quite reasonably group the 10 commandments into 8 commandments, if you like. There's a whole host of things which are about making sure God comes first. You can put those together rather than spread them out. And there's a whole list of things that we're not supposed to covet. You can spread them out or you can concentrate them up. And it gets a bit more confusing when you realise that even the phrase, the 10 Commandments, is a bit of an imposition from English translations on what the Hebrew actually says. The Hebrew scriptures just refer to them as the 10 words or the 10 sayings or the 10 terms. See, it's not that there aren't 10 commandments, it's just that we can't work out what the statements are that make those commandments. And then you add to that in fact they're not commandments anyway, they're just statements. And actually a huge chunk of Jewish history has treated the first statement as the first term, if I can put it that way. It's not a commandment, it's I am the Lord your God. But that's a very important statement, so they say that's number one. So what's going on and what can we draw out of it? Where's it leading us to? Well, I won't try and expand and contract all of the different possibilities now. I'm going to summarise it, and to a degree you have to kind of take my word on it unless you want to look at some of the things I've taught on this or written about it before. But you can actually group the commandments into 8 in one sense in a summary. There's putting a load of the honouring the Lord your God together, considering all of the things you're not supposed to covet together, you end up with kind of 8. Or you can expand it to 14 plus, depending on how many things you want to break not coveting into. So why are they called the Ten Commandments? Well, I think the first thing to notice is the Ten Commandments is probably not what God ever called them. It's kind of what the scribes refer to them later. And people often find this is a bit complex to get their heads around, but remember, the Bible as we have it wasn't written at the time it was given. There are things that were written at the time it was given, but it was finally edited, finally put together by the first temple, and then the second temple actually gave us the Old Testament in the form we have it today. And so you often get little anachronistic kind of feedbacks, a place name that back in Joseph's day wasn't called what it was, but today everybody knows it by that region. So I say today, the writers in the time the Old Testament is being written, that's how they know it. So they refer to that place by that name, you see. And that's quite common. You see that in histories all over the world. You use the names that people recognise. And so when we actually find that phrase, the Ten Commandments, it's a kind of an insert from those later editors. They refer to what's going on and God giving the covenant, then it will say, kind of as a standalone sentence, the Ten Commandments, the 10 words. So what we know is that by the time the Bible is being written, this kind of summary statement that sits at the beginning of 613 commands that kind of captures them all, it gives them a foundation for everything else that comes to be anchored onto, that's being referred to in Jewish thinking as the 10 Commandments or the 10 words, not commandments, because as I said, the Jewish The Hebrew doesn't say commandments, it says words. And that tells us something. Because perhaps then the 10 terms is the best, because it is a bit of a list of terms and conditions. This is the covenant, and here's the summary. Everything else is going to be added to that. There's a lot more commandments than 10 there. Why 10 words? And the answer is very simple, is that the 10 words also, there are 10 words that God speaks in creation. God says, let there be light, and there is light. And so 10 times in creation, God gives a word, he gives a statement, he gives a term. And now as he establishes the covenant with Israel, he gives a statement, he gives a term. And although God never calls it that, the scribes looking back on it said, this is the 10 words, just as there were 10 words in creation. These are the 10 words that God spoke to create Israel. And so it's a bit of a summary in those ways. And you could make 8 terms out of them if you really want to, or you could stretch them out, make 14 plus. But summary, they're the 10 things, because it's not like in creation God never said anything else. It's just these are the way we understand creation, and these 10 words of fiat, and everything's going to flow from that. And so we sum up this summary and we call it the 10 words. But what's really interesting is that's the foundation. If you go to Deuteronomy 28, and actually God speaks very clearly. He says, if you keep all of this, you keep this covenant, then there are these blessings that are coming. And then 8 times in Deuteronomy 28, verses 8 1 to 14, God uses the word blessed. You'll be blessed in this, and you'll be blessed in that. You'll be blessed in this, you'll be blessed in that. And so there was an understanding that the 10 words, which were kind of a parallel of God creating the universe as actually him creating this covenant, is going to one day be fulfilled in 8 blessings. And so the reason I just want to touch on that is you see that then reflected in Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. Is he starts the Sermon on the Mount with 8 blessings, fulfilling an expectation of the rabbinic Jewish thinkers who were looking for various messianic figures, one of which was the prophet that was like Moses that would come after him, who they said will actually now declare, if you like, a radical new reinterpretation, because the law has been fulfilled in its letter, and so we come into the spirit of it, which is now fulfilled in 8 blessings, which is what Jesus is doing when he lays out the 10 commandments. So I could say a lot more, but this is a quick coffee moment. Just time where you drink your cup of coffee to enjoy a few thoughts. So I probably would do another of these, and we'll think a little bit more about the Sermon on the Mount, which is clearly Jesus, both as he says in it, in fact, verse 15, I think, is it Matthew 5, said, I don't think I came to abolish it, I came to fulfill it. It's that fulfillment in the expectation of his hearers as a radical reinterpretation. It meant that the law would mean something different, but it's not the same as getting rid of it. And that's right at the heart, of course, what Jesus does. He changes our understanding of even what's gone before in quite radical ways. So anyway, those are my thoughts this morning for this quick coffee moment. I hope they stimulate some thought, and I hope you fancy joining me. You'll notice I'm doing a jigsaw at the moment. I've done quite a few of these during lockdown. It's a nice way of kind of spending half an hour if you've got time have a hot drink, do a crossword, listen to some music or an audio book. So I guess you'll be doing the same, and perhaps now even kind of tuning into some of these. But anyway, I'll see you next time.